I never imagined that the man I married, the man who once promised to carry me through every storm, would someday call me a burden. For months, I lay in that hospital bed, paralyzed, broken, and stripped of independence. My husband, Daniel, stood by me at first, but his patience wore thin. I heard the whispers, the sharp words he thought I couldn't process. "She's nothing but dead weight. I didn't sign up for this." My heart shattered more deeply than my body ever could. But what Daniel didn't know was that my story wasn't ending there. The day I stood up on my own 2 feet, the day strength returned to me, was the day his entire world collapsed. Because hidden beneath my silence was a truth he never expected, a truth that would flip his betrayal back onto him in the cruelest way possible. Daniel and I had what most people would call a picture-perfect marriage. We weren't rich, but we had enough. A cozy little house on the edge of town, 2 beautiful children, and a bond that seemed unshakable. For years, I devoted myself to my family. I worked long nights, saved every penny, and poured my energy into making sure my husband and children never lacked anything. Daniel had dreams, big ones, and I sacrificed mine so he could chase his. When he wanted to go back to school, I took on extra shifts. When he wanted to start a small business, I dipped into my savings. I believed in him, in us, in the future we were building together. But life has a way of testing even the strongest hearts. The accident changed everything. One moment I was walking home from work, the next I was on the ground, unable to feel my legs. The doctor said recovery was uncertain, that I might never walk again. Through the endless nights in the hospital, I clung to hope. I told myself Daniel's love would be my anchor. But as the days stretched into weeks and weeks into months, I began to see a different side of the man I thought I knew. His patience thinned, his affection faded, and soon, the cracks in our marriage grew into something darker. I had given him my strength, but in my weakness, I discovered who he truly was. In the beginning, there was love. Real, undeniable love. Daniel wasn't just my husband. He was my best friend, my confidant, the one I believed God himself had chosen for me. We met young, when our pockets were empty but our dreams were overflowing. He'd walk me home under the streetlights, promising a future full of laughter, a home we'd build together, and a family we'd cherish. And for a long time, he kept those promises. Our mornings started with him bringing me coffee, just the way I liked it, sweet, with a splash of cream. We would laugh about the children's little tantrums, about bills piling up, about the ordinary chaos of life. To anyone looking from the outside, we were just another ordinary family, sometimes tired, sometimes stressed, but bound by love. But beneath the smiles, I noticed things. Little things, like how Daniel's compliments became less frequent, how his kisses grew shorter, more mechanical, like checking something off a list. When he got home from work, he no longer rushed to tell me about his day. Instead, he went straight to his phone, scrolling endlessly, shutting me out. I told myself it was stress, pressure from the business, exhaustion. Love makes excuses. Then came the accident. It was an ordinary evening. I left work late, walking quickly through the dimly lit streets, thinking about the dinner I'd cook and the laundry waiting at home. Then, a screech, a flash of light, the force of metal slamming into my body. I woke up in a hospital bed, tubes running into me, my legs unresponsive. The doctor said my spine had been damaged. Some people recovered, some never did. They couldn't give me certainty. I remember gripping Daniel's hand, whispering through the pain, "Promise me you won't give up on me." And he nodded, eyes glassy with tears. For a while, he meant it. He came every day, adjusting my pillows, spoon-feeding me soup when my hands trembled, telling me, "We'll get through this, love. I'm not going anywhere." But as weeks stretched into months, his visits grew shorter. His tone sharpened. Instead of encouragement, I began hearing sighs, heavy and irritated. If the nurse was late, he complained that he had better things to do. When I asked him to read to me, like he once did, he muttered, "You need to stop acting like a child." The children noticed, too. My daughter once whispered, "Mom, why doesn't Daddy smile anymore?" My heart broke, not just for me, but for them. I told myself things would get better once I came home. But when I finally did, I wasn't welcomed with warmth. I was welcomed with resentment. Daniel looked at the wheelchair being wheeled through our door as though it were an intruder, an unwanted guest. The man who once carried me over thresholds now seemed weighed down by my presence. I tried to remind him of the love we had, the vows we exchanged. But the more I held on, the more distant he became. At first, it was in his silence. Then, in his words. And finally, in something so cold and cruel that it shattered everything I thought we had built together. And it all began the night I overheard him on the phone, speaking words that cut deeper than any wound on my body. The first time I truly heard the venom in his voice, it was by accident. I was in the living room, dozing off in my wheelchair, when Daniel slipped into the kitchen. I thought he was just making a late-night snack. But then, I heard his voice, low, sharp, and full of bitterness. "I can't keep doing this," he hissed into the phone. "She's a burden. I didn't sign up to spend my life babysitting a woman who can't even walk." My heart clenched. I wanted to believe I'd misheard, that maybe he was talking about something else. But then his words turned darker. "I should have left months ago. But the kids? Yeah, I know. Still, what kind of life is this? Every day it's the same. Feeding her, cleaning up after her. It's pathetic." I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. My hands trembled against the arms of the chair. This was my husband, the man I had sacrificed everything for. The man who once swore he would carry me through any storm was now calling me a weight chained around his neck. When he noticed me in the doorway, his eyes widened. For a split second, guilt flashed across his face. But just as quickly, it hardened into coldness. "You weren't supposed to hear that," he muttered. Tears burned my eyes. "Daniel, how could you? After everything we've been through, after everything I gave up for you." He cut me off. "Don't start with the martyr talk, okay? You think I don't notice how this has ruined everything? I work all day, then I come home to this, a half-wife, a shadow. You think that's easy for me?" The words sliced me open. Half-wife. Shadow. As though my worth was tied only to what my body could do. From that night on, the mask completely fell away. He no longer tried to hide his contempt. If I asked for water, he rolled his eyes. If I needed help moving to bed, he sighed loud enough for the neighbors to hear. The man who once whispered, "I love you," now muttered things like pathetic under his breath. And then came the ultimate betrayal. One afternoon, while folding laundry in the living room, I heard my daughter say innocently, "Daddy, why was Miss Claire here when Mommy was sleeping?" My blood froze. Claire, his assistant, the woman I'd always noticed lingering a little too long in conversations, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes. I confronted him that night, my voice shaking. "Is there something you need to tell me?" He didn't even try to deny it. His shoulders slumped, and he said flatly, "Claire gives me what you can't. She makes me feel alive again. I need more than just pity and hospital bills in my life." The room spun. My chest ached so fiercely I thought my heart might stop right there. I couldn't breathe. The man I had stood by through every hardship was not only calling me a burden, he was seeking comfort in someone else's arms. But through my tears, through the shattering of my world, I held on to one thing, the fire inside me. Because deep down, I knew something Daniel didn't, something he would never see coming. And the day that secret was revealed, the day I stood up and faced him, was the day his entire world crumbled. For weeks after Daniel's confession, I lived in a fog. The pain of knowing my husband had not only abandoned me emotionally, but also betrayed me physically was almost too much to bear. At night, I lay awake, listening to his shallow breathing beside me, wondering how long he had been planning his escape. But while he thought I was broken, physically, emotionally, spiritually, something inside me began to shift. A quiet strength was rising, fueled not by anger alone, but by resolve. What Daniel didn't know was that I had been working with a therapist in secret. The doctors had said it was unlikely I would walk again, but I refused to let their words define me. Every day, I pushed myself. Tiny movements, painful exercises. At first, it was nothing more than wiggling a toe, then lifting a leg a fraction of an inch. The progress was slow, agonizing, but it was progress nonetheless. I didn't tell Daniel. I let him believe I was helpless, trapped in the chair, because I wanted him to reveal who he truly was without restraint. And he did. He grew crueler, careless, and eventually bold enough to flaunt his betrayal. He started staying out late, returning with perfume on his clothes, with excuses that barely made sense. But while he slipped further into his lies, I grew stronger. Strong enough that, one fateful morning, I stood. My legs trembled like branches in the wind, my arms clutching the walker for balance, but I stood. And I didn't just stand, I walked. Tears streamed down my face as I took those shaky steps across the room. My children, who had been watching me with wide eyes, screamed with joy. They ran into my arms, and I collapsed to my knees, holding them tighter than ever before. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just surviving. I was coming back. I waited until the right day to reveal it. It was a Sunday evening. Daniel had just returned home, his shirt untucked, his face flushed from wherever he'd been. He looked at me with that same disgust he always did now, muttering, "You should be grateful I'm still here at all." And then, without a word, I rose. Slowly, steadily, I pushed myself up from the chair and stood in front of him. His jaw dropped. The color drained from his face. How are you?" he stammered. I looked him in the eyes, stronger than I'd ever felt before, and said, "I may have been paralyzed, Daniel, but you've been crippled by your own selfishness. And now it's over." I revealed everything I had discovered, the affair, the late-night calls, the financial secrets I had quietly uncovered while he underestimated me. He hadn't just been unfaithful. He had been siphoning money from our accounts to fund his new life with her. The children stood behind me, watching, and for the first time, Daniel crumbled. The man who once stood tall, who called me weak, fell to his knees, sobbing. "Please don't leave me. I didn't mean it. I was lost." But I had already found myself again. I filed for divorce the next week. I secured the house, my savings, and most importantly, my dignity. Daniel lost not just his family, but the respect of the children he once tried to turn against me. And Claire? She quickly abandoned him when the money ran dry. The day I stood up, Daniel fell apart. Not because my legs carried me again, but because my spirit had risen higher than his cruelty could ever reach. Life has a way of revealing the truth when we least expect it. For months, I believed I was broken, physically powerless and emotionally destroyed. But in reality, my paralysis gave me vision. It showed me who truly stood by me and who only stayed for convenience. Daniel thought my weakness would last forever, but it became the very thing that exposed his own. When I stood again, it wasn't just about walking. It was about reclaiming my strength, my dignity, and my life. His betrayal nearly crushed me, but in the end, it freed me. The lesson is this: love built on conditions will collapse under pressure, but love built on sacrifice and respect will endure anything. Never let someone convince you that you are less because of your struggles. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't anger or revenge at all. It's rising, stronger, while they fall apart.